Inflation is one of those economic terms that often gets mentioned in the news, especially when prices start to rise or when central banks make decisions about interest rates. Yet for many people, the concept remains somewhat abstract, something that happens out there in the economy, but not necessarily something that seems to directly impact their day-to-day lives. However, inflation is far from a distant phenomenon. It weaves itself into the very fabric of our financial well-being, influencing everything from the price of groceries to the long-term value of our savings. Understanding how inflation affects your savings is crucial for making informed decisions about your money, both now and in the future. At its core, inflation refers to the general increase in prices across an economy over time. When inflation is present, the purchasing power of each unit of currency declines, meaning that the same amount of money buys fewer goods and services than it did before. This erosion of purchasing power is the central way in which inflation impacts your savings. If you keep your money in a traditional savings account, earning little or no interest, inflation can quietly eat away at its value, leaving you with less real wealth than you started with, even if the nominal amount stays the same or grows slightly. To truly grasp the impact of inflation on your savings, it helps to consider a simple example. Imagine you have $10,000 in a savings account that pays 1% annual interest. Over a year, you would earn $100 in interest, bringing your balance to $10,100. However, if inflation during that year was 3%, the prices of goods and services have increased by an average of 3%. In effect, your $10,100 at the end of the year will buy less than your $10,000 could have bought at the beginning. The real return on your savings, the return after accounting for inflation, is negative. In other words, your money has lost value in terms of what it can actually purchase. This phenomenon is not just a theoretical concern. It has significant implications for anyone who is saving for future goals, whether that's buying a home, paying for education, or preparing for retirement. If inflation consistently outpaces the returns on your savings, your ability to achieve these goals is compromised. Over long periods, even modest inflation can have a dramatic impact. For instance, at an average inflation rate of 2% per year, the value of money halves in about 35 years. At 3% inflation, it takes just 24 years for the purchasing power of your savings to be cut in half. This underscores why it is so important to consider inflation when planning your financial future. But how exactly does inflation arise, and why does it persist? There are several causes of inflation, but they generally fall into two categories: demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Demand pull inflation occurs when the demand for goods and services exceeds supply, driving up prices. This can happen in a booming economy where consumers and businesses are spending freely. Cost push inflation, on the other hand, results from increases in the costs of production, such as higher wages or rising prices for raw materials, which are then passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the United States, try to manage inflation through monetary policy, adjusting interest rates to either stimulate or cool down the economy as needed. While moderate inflation is generally considered a sign of a healthy, growing economy, high or unpredictable inflation can be destabilizing. For savers, the key concern is that inflation can erode the real value of their money. This effect is particularly pronounced in low-interest rate environments, where traditional savings vehicles offer minimal returns. In such cases, the gap between the interest earned and the rate of inflation can be wide, leading to a steady decline in purchasing power. One of the most insidious aspects of inflation is that its effects are not always immediately obvious. You might notice that your weekly grocery bill is a bit higher or that the price of gas has crept up. But unless you're tracking the overall trend, it's easy to underestimate the cumulative impact over time. For long-term savers, this can be particularly dangerous. Someone saving diligently for retirement over several decades may find that the nest egg they've built up is worth much less than anticipated when it comes time to draw on those funds. The impact of inflation on different types of savings varies. Cash kept under the mattress, for example, loses value at the full rate of inflation. Money held in a standard savings account fares only slightly better if the interest rate is below inflation. Certificates of deposit, CDs, and fixed income investments can also be vulnerable if their yields do not keep pace with rising prices. On the other hand, certain types of assets, such as stocks, real estate, or inflation-protected securities, may offer better protection against inflation, though they come with their own risks and considerations. Let's delve deeper into the specific ways in which inflation can affect your savings and what you can do to mitigate its impact. First, consider the concept of real return. This is the return on your investment after accounting for inflation. If your savings account earns 2% interest per year, but inflation is running at 3%, your real return is actually 1%. In practical terms, this means that while your account balance is growing in nominal terms, its actual purchasing power is shrinking. Over time, this negative real return can significantly diminish the value of your savings. Another important factor is the compounding effect of inflation. Just as compound interest can help your savings grow over time, inflation compounds the erosion of your money's value. Each year, not only do prices rise, but the base on which those increases are calculated also grows. This means that the longer your money sits in a low-yield account during periods of inflation, the greater the cumulative loss in purchasing power. For retirees and those approaching retirement, the stakes are particularly high. Many retirees rely on fixed incomes from pensions, Social Security, or annuities. If these income streams are not adjusted for inflation, their real value diminishes over time, making it harder to maintain the same standard of living. This is why some pensions and government benefits include cost of living adjustments, COLAs, which are designed to help offset the impact of inflation. However, not all income sources offer this protection, so it's important to plan accordingly. Beyond the direct impact on savings, inflation can also influence interest rates. Central banks often respond to rising inflation by increasing benchmark interest rates in an effort to cool down the economy. Higher interest rates can benefit savers by boosting returns on new savings accounts, CDs, and other fixed income investments. However, these effects are not always immediate, and existing savings products may not benefit from rate hikes until they mature or are rolled over. Moreover, higher interest rates can also increase borrowing costs, affecting everything from mortgages to credit card balances. Given these challenges, what can savers do to protect themselves from the erosive effects of inflation? The first step is awareness. By understanding how inflation works and how it affects your money, you can make more informed decisions about where and how to save. One common strategy is to diversify your savings and investments, spreading your money across a range of asset classes that may respond differently to inflationary pressures. For instance, stocks have historically offered better long-term protection against inflation than cash or bonds. This is because companies can often pass on higher costs to consumers in the form of higher prices, which can translate into higher revenues and profits. Over time, this can help boost stock prices, providing a hedge against inflation. Real estate is another asset class that has tended to perform well during inflationary periods. As the prices of goods and services rise, so too can the value of property and the rents that landlords can charge. Inflation-protected securities, such as Treasury Inflation-Protected Securities, TPS, in the U.S., offer another option. These bonds are specifically designed to keep pace with inflation as their principal value adjusts in line with changes in the Consumer Price Index, CPI. While the returns on TIPS may be lower than those of traditional bonds in times of low inflation, they offer valuable protection when inflation is on the rise. Commodities, such as gold, oil, and agricultural products, are sometimes viewed as inflation hedges as well. The prices of these goods often rise when inflation accelerates, providing a store of value that can help offset losses elsewhere in your portfolio. However, commodities can be volatile and may not be suitable for all investors. It's also important to regularly review and adjust your savings strategy in light of changing economic conditions. What worked well in a period of low inflation may not be as effective when prices are rising rapidly. Keeping an eye on inflation trends, interest rates, and the performance of your investments can help you stay ahead of the curve and make adjustments as needed. For those who prefer the safety and simplicity of traditional savings accounts, shopping around for the best rates can make a difference. Online banks and credit unions often offer higher yields than traditional brick-and-mortar institutions. Even a small increase in your savings rate can help offset some of the impact of inflation over time. Budgeting and spending habits also play a role in managing the effects of inflation. By keeping track of your expenses and looking for ways to cut costs, you can help ensure that your savings stretch further, even as prices rise. This might involve reevaluating subscriptions, shopping for deals, or finding more cost-effective alternatives for everyday purchases. Another key consideration is the role of debt. Inflation can have a mixed impact on borrowers. On one hand, if you have fixed-rate debt, such as a mortgage, inflation can actually work in your favor. As prices and wages rise, the real value of your monthly payments declines, making it easier to pay off your loan over time. On the other hand, variable-rate debt can become more expensive if interest rates rise in response to inflation, so it's important to understand the terms of your loans and plan accordingly. Ultimately, the best defense against inflation is a proactive, informed approach to managing your finances. By staying aware of inflation's effects and taking steps to protect your savings, you can help ensure that your money maintains its value and continues to work for you, both now and in the years to come. As you think about your own saving strategy, it's helpful to consider the broader economic environment. Inflation does not occur in a vacuum. It is influenced by a wide range of factors, including global supply chains, labor markets, government policies, and technological advancements. For example, disruptions in supply chains can lead to shortages and drive up prices, while rapid advances in technology can improve productivity and help keep inflation in check. Understanding these dynamics can give you a clearer sense of where inflation might be headed and how best to position your savings. Financial literacy is also an important tool in combating the effects of inflation. The more you know about personal finance, investing, and economic trends, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions about your money. This might involve reading books, attending workshops, or working with a financial advisor who can help you develop a customized strategy. It's also worth noting that inflation does not affect everyone equally. People with substantial assets in inflation, protected, or appreciating investments may fare better than those who rely solely on fixed income sources. Similarly, individuals whose incomes keep pace with or outstrip inflation are less vulnerable than those on stagnant wages or fixed benefits. This makes it all the more important to take a proactive approach to managing your finances and seeking out opportunities to grow your wealth. Another aspect to consider is the psychological impact of inflation. Rising prices can create anxiety and uncertainty, leading some people to cut back on spending or delay important purchases. While it's natural to be concerned about the impact of inflation on your savings, it's important not to let fear drive your financial decisions. Instead, focus on building a solid, diversified financial foundation that can weather a variety of economic conditions. In addition to traditional savings and investment strategies, you might also consider ways to increase your income as a hedge against inflation. This could involve pursuing additional education or training to qualify for higher-paying jobs, starting a side business, or investing in your own skills and abilities. By boosting your earning potential, you can help ensure that your income keeps pace with rising prices, reducing the risk that inflation will erode your standard of living. For families, it's important to talk openly about the impact of inflation and involve everyone in the process of budgeting and financial planning. Teaching children about the importance of saving, investing, and managing money in an inflationary environment can help set them up for long-term success. When it comes to retirement planning, inflation should be a central consideration. Many experts recommend using conservative estimates for future inflation rates when projecting your retirement needs. This can help ensure that you don't underestimate the amount of money you'll need to maintain your desired lifestyle. It's also wise to include inflation-protected assets in your retirement portfolio and to consider strategies such as delayed Social Security claiming, which can result in higher inflation-adjusted benefits. Healthcare is another area where inflation can have a significant impact, especially for retirees. Medical costs have historically risen faster than general inflation, so it's important to factor this into your long-term planning. Health savings accounts, HSAs, long-term care insurance, and other tools can help you prepare for these expenses. Estate planning is also affected by inflation. The value of inheritances and bequests can be eroded over time if they are held in cash or low-yield investments. By incorporating inflation-protected assets and regularly reviewing your estate plan, you can help ensure that your legacy retains its intended value. Tax considerations are also important. Some forms of investment income are taxed differently, and inflation can push you into higher tax brackets even if your real income hasn't increased. Staying informed about tax laws and working with a qualified advisor can help you minimize the impact of taxes on your inflation-adjusted returns. For business owners and entrepreneurs, inflation presents both challenges and opportunities. Rising costs can squeeze profit margins, but those who are able to adapt by raising prices, improving efficiency, or finding new markets may be able to thrive in an inflationary environment. Business owners should also consider the impact of inflation on their own savings and retirement plans, as well as on the value of their businesses. Globalization and international factors add another layer of complexity. Inflation rates can vary widely from one country to another, and currency fluctuations can impact the value of international investments. Diversifying across different regions and currencies can help mitigate some of these risks. Looking ahead, it's impossible to predict exactly how inflation will evolve. Economic conditions, policy decisions, and unforeseen events can all influence the trajectory of prices. However, by staying informed, diversifying your savings, and adopting a flexible approach to financial planning, you can help protect yourself from the worst effects of inflation. In summary, inflation is a powerful force that shapes the value of your savings over time. While it may seem like a distant concern, its effects can be profound, especially over the long term. By understanding how inflation works and taking proactive steps to safeguard your money, you can help ensure that your savings continue to support your financial goals, both today and in the future. Whether you're just starting out on your financial journey or planning for retirement, keeping inflation in mind is essential to building and maintaining lasting wealth.